This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Joining us in the huddle today is Richard Gould, founder of Richard's Painting. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, Richard, you worked for someone else's painting company for 5 years, learned the trade, and then started your own painting business almost 20 years ago. You then subsequently launched the franchise system back in 2019, which is obviously interesting timing with what happened in 2020. So how did you go from being a painter to building a franchise system?
Well, we can start back even before I was a painter. I'm a high school dropout, worked a bunch of jobs, after I left high school. And one day a friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to go paint?" So that's what I did. And then once I started doing the painting, realized I really liked this, making people happy, working for somebody new all the time. And I was actually pretty good at it. And so the opportunity came where the person I started working for, his name was Don Greer, and it was called Nassau Painting Company, which is in Princeton, New Jersey. And so
I grew up not too far from there. I'm from Bucks County, PA, so just across the river from Nassau.
there you go. Perfect. So so Nassau Street runs right through Princeton, where the university is. So everybody had Nassau Plumbing, Nassau Electric, Nassau Painting. And so I ended up taking the business over from Don, and he was ready to retire. And I ran it for about 5 years after that. And I was getting to the point where I was ready to, build a house or buy a house. And in New Jersey, if anybody knows, taxes are really high, values are crazy in certain areas. So I was thinking about moving a little further south. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to move that far south away from the business, I could move maybe another 8 hours further south to North Carolina. And so that's because my brother already lived here in North Carolina. So I already had kind of a connection that way. And so I sold the business in New Jersey, moved to North Carolina, started all over again. And this is the beginning of where the franchise part really started, because I moved to an area where I knew absolutely nobody. Salisbury, North Carolina, you wouldn't find it on a map unless you knew where it was. And
I asked you before we started because I didn't know either.
It's not somewhere everybody knows. But I was able to start with nothing, not know anybody, and build this business up to over $1 million a year, in not too long a time. And so at that point, once I felt like, okay, well, I've done this, what do I do next? I really wanted to grow the business. Okay, I want to go and do more, but I'm not the kind of person who wants to travel 60 miles, 70 miles, 80 miles in every direction to go get jobs. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm watching things, and I see this, at the time was Monster Tree Service.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, well, wow, if they can franchise a tree service business, then painting must be pretty easy. And I don't know much about it at the time. And so anyway, I actually reach out to some people at Franchise Fastlane. This is way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't return my call for probably 6 months. But finally, after calling enough times, they answered. And I asked them, said, "Hey, I'm interested in franchising." And they said, "Oh, great. We're looking for a painting concept." I thought, man, I hit the lottery. Perfect. And then they said, "Okay, well, just send us your FDD and the information." I'm like, "FDD?" I'm like, "What's that?" They're like, "Well, you don't even have an FDD?" I'm like, "No." And so, "Well, you're not ready for us." That's basically what they told me. And so they set me up with a few other companies, and to say, "Hey, you need to go reach out to them. They can help you get started." And that's what I did. And now here we are 6 or so years later and 28 locations in, and so far so good.
That's awesome. Well, I want to delve into that a little bit. Incidentally, I'll plug a buddy of mine, Larry Lieberman, who's another FranServe consultant. He owns a cigar concept called the Cigar Library on Nassau Street, currently in Princeton. So next time you're back in Jersey, go visit Larry's place. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. So I'm happy for him. So Richard, what does it actually take to grow a service business beyond yourself, right? Because like you relocated down to North Carolina and then you built it up to $1 million in sales and, from scratch. So like, what does it take to kind of get there?
I mean, the first thing is the willingness to fail, right? I think, most successful people you have to have risk, right? And now there's calculated risk, right? I didn't do a lot of things. I was smart enough to know when to put myself in the right positions and things like that. I mean, but to be successful, especially in the service businesses or home services or any business,
Yeah.
you have to have the desire to want to be successful and be willing to do whatever it takes, right? If you have no jobs on Monday and today is Thursday and you're going to go look at a job, well, your goal that day is to figure out, how do I get this person to say yes, right? And maybe it's not for the right amount of money. Maybe it's not the most ideal job, but it helps keep the train moving, right? It helps get you
Yeah.
to the next opportunity. A lot of people get started in business, and I can tell you this based on coaching I do on the franchisee side. Some people have a fantasy in their head about what business is, where like you
Yeah.
sit behind a desk and you just write checks and you call people and you do stuff and it just happens. But the reality is, to be successful, or at least really successful, you have to put a lot of sweat equity in. You got to, make the phone calls, talk to the right people, hire the right people, and have a plan. I know it's a long answer, but it's pretty much the formula.
Yeah. So, you and I have something in common. About 25 years ago, I worked for someone else for 5 years to learn the franchise development and consulting space. And then I started my own company back in 2006. So, for you, when you switched from working a job to building a company, like what was the biggest mindset shift that you had to adopt to be able to accomplish that?
Yeah. So the first step is realizing that you might fail, right? That's the first thing, that there's a possibility that you're going to do all the right things and it might not work out,
Right.
right? First, you've got to establish that. But the next part is do you, let's say you're 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, and you say to yourself when you're 80, man, I wish I would have tried that, right? I know for me, I'm willing to fail to succeed. And so I'm willing to go out there and say, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to do everything I can to be successful. And if I do those things, theoretically, those things should work. But you got to take the risk first. You got to get out there and do it. And then the next biggest thing is not giving up. I think
Hmm.
the difference between a successful business person and somebody who's not successful is the sheer fact that the one who succeeded didn't give up, and the one who failed gave up before they ever got to the finish line. I think
That's a
that's
really good
really
point.
how it
Really
goes.
good observation. And, that's when people ask me, how am I going to do in this franchise? It's like, well, I can put two people in the same market in the same franchise with vastly different results because of just what you said, which is how, willing they are to do whatever it takes and keep at it until they succeed, which isn't easy to do. It takes capital, it takes the right mindset, like you mentioned. So, you mentioned that at some point back in 2019, it's like, all right, we're going to franchise this thing. And I know you made those phone calls to Fastlane. At what point did you realize that Richard's Painting could become a franchise system?
Well, this is advice for aspiring franchisors. I had my own location, and I knew what I did was really well, or really good. But was it just me, or was it what we did that made the difference? So what I did is I went and opened up another location in a different area, and I hired somebody as a manager and gave them the system and everything we do, and say, hey, okay, let's see if this works without me. And after 1 year, they did close to $300,000 in sales, and I said, okay, it's not just me, right? It can work somewhere else. And
Yeah.
so that's what I did before I started to franchise. I wanted to make sure that if I was going to get franchisees involved, that, because I knew they were going to depend on me to help them grow their business, that it had to work without me.
No,
So
that's
that's
smart
that's what
because
I did.
sometimes you lose sight of what it took for you to grow that business when you relocated to North Carolina. Because once you're several years in and things are humming away and you have the customers and you have the referrals, you forget what it's like to start from scratch. So to do that, and you're your own guinea pig before you franchise that, I think is pretty meaningful. I mean, it shows like put your money where your mouth is. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this myself before we then have new owners come in and try the same thing. So that's cool. So let's talk about like customer experience because a lot of it is lost in the trades. In your view, why is branding and customer experience like so important in what you guys do?
Well, the customer experience is everything. Like, anybody can get a roller, a brush, and put it on a wall. Anybody can get a vacuum and a leaf blower and clean out dryer vents, right? Anybody can do any of these things, but how do they make the customer feel, right? What we find that works the most, we don't have to be the greatest painters. We don't have to be perfect. What we have to be, though, is attentive and really focusing on what the customer needs and what they're looking for. And so what we really work hard on is making sure we have the right kind of people, right? You got to have the right franchisees, but then you also have the right people underneath them doing the actual work face to face. And so, our experience is when you hear from customers who say, man, I really liked William and I want him back the next time. And then go to the next job and say, oh, I really like Jamie. He must be your best painter and we want him back the next time. And you hear that over and over again, you realize that it's not really the painting that what we do. Yeah, we're Richard's painting. I know that's what it says on the shirt, but the truth is it's really the experience that we provide where we make people feel like we're really there to help them and we're there to make their life easier and make painting feel like it was no big deal, like it didn't even happen. And so that's what we focus on 100%.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's cultural. So when you think about the culture of the business, that kind of influences customers, your employees, and even your franchise owners. So how do you build a business that people want to be a part of?
Well, you got to hire the right people first, right? But I will say you also have to go through some people who aren't the right ones. You're going to hire somebody who's not perfect, right? If I had $1 for every time I heard anybody in the trades tell me how hard it is to hire somebody and they don't grow because they can't find people. Let me tell you, Mike, it's bullshit. I'm going to say that out loud, right? Because the truth is that nobody really wants to put the work in. And so what we do as a franchise is we help our franchisees by letting them know that like you have to hire people not based on their skill, but based on their personality, how they interact, all the other things that come into it. Because again, anybody can paint. It is not rocket science,
Yep.
right? But can anybody, be respectful? And can you leave somebody at somebody's house and have the people feel like they just are so happy to have them there? That's really what it is. It's just the right people. And then what we do on our end is, yes, once you have good people, then you got to take care of them, right? You got to pay them adequately. You got to treat them like human beings, not like somebody who they should just be happy to have a paycheck. No, like we do, we have, do events where we have, take them to a baseball game, a soccer match, or have a pool party at our house, right? It's like all the other things where you could build a culture where you just get all the right people in the right place.
Yeah, it sounds like you're hiring for behavior and responsibility and the way they present themselves. And yes, it's nice if they have painting experience, but you can teach that. But you can't teach, for someone to be charismatic and polite and friendly. Like those things have to be inherent in the person. And then you can say, okay, we'll fill in the blanks with, how Richard's painting does its thing. So that's kind of cool that it's about how your customers feel and it's about hiring the right people that are kind of the right seats on the bus. So let's talk about like social media, personal branding. How, in your view, has that changed blue collar, businesses?
Well, just like anything in life and marketing, you got to change with the times, right? 25 years ago, 30 years ago, you had to be in the yellow pages, right? Then Google has been, over the last 20 years, the main driving force in that. And then, you got Facebook, who in the last, 10 years has been really big. Now that's just on the ad side. Now building your personal brand, right? That's a whole nother level where what it automatically does is it's building instant trust between you and the customer. The more they see you, the more they talk, they actually become your friend, because they see you all the time. And then you're talking about the painting and what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then you see the people working in the background. It just creates this, as soon as you show up now for an estimate, it's like, hey, we're already friends. All you gotta do is just hire me. So it's a whole nother level that nobody ever had before, where you couldn't, like, for us, like when we sell a job, like you could tell people all day long, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do a good job. We're going to respect your house. But you can't really experience it until it happens. Right now, when you're building the brand online, through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all these platforms, now they can actually see it happening. So when you say it, they actually believe it. So it's actually helping us way more than others out there. And so, yeah. And the other thing here, and it's free, FYI, it doesn't cost any money yet. I'm pretty sure one day that they're going to figure out that they're going to charge you for that too, but that's a different story.
Yeah. No, I think it kind of translates into my business on the franchise development side, because when people see you talking about the brands and they see you as an expert, you cut through a lot of the stuff and you get right to like, how can I help you be successful in business ownership, or is business and franchise ownership right for you? Same thing with your customers and your franchise owners. They have that trust. So you skip a lot of the stuff and you get right to what the client wants. Like, what do we need done? When do you need it done? How can we do it best? And like you said, the trust is already implied because they feel like they know you, which is pretty cool. So, what do you look for, Richard, when you like switching over to the franchise side? What do you look for in a successful owner? Like who succeeds in your system?
Well, first, it's the same thing as like hiring an employee, right? Even though they're not employees, we're looking for the right kind of people. Like if you're going to be a person who doesn't think that the customer is everything in our world, then you're probably not going to be the right person. If you don't have respect for the people who do the work for you every day, who are out there painting, then you're probably not the right person, right? We also are we want people who just want to build a business in their community, make a really good living and keep growing that business until it becomes as successful as it can be. And that's really what we're looking for. Now, that's all different ranges. The great thing about Richard's painting is that you could be the guy who wants to do $1 million in year two, or you could be a guy who just wants to do $250,000 a year, make a good living, go out there, do some painting yourself, and maybe have one other employee. We're okay with that too. We just want happy employees. We just want happy franchisees,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the key.
And I'm assuming that you allow the franchise owner to not just do residential work, they have the opportunity to do commercial, or do you just stick on the residential side?
No, we want you to get as many opportunities as possible. We're not going to limit you into the type of painting. Yeah, we do everything from residential, commercial. I mean, epoxy floors. We pressure wash. Do decks, remove popcorn. We hang wallpaper. That's the great thing about painting is it covers so many areas that it's not like a lot of other service businesses where it's just like maybe one or two things that you have to work within. We have 10 to 15 different verticals. I don't use those words. I don't even know why I said that. We have like 15 different services we offer.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've talked to franchise owners that sometimes are frustrated that their franchise system is just doesn't give them the flexibility to do other services. They have to stay in their lane with the core services and other services like franchises that might be a little bit more emerging where they are like, look, if it's aligned with what we do and we're able to do it, then we want our owners to have the ability to generate revenue and get into those things. So it sounds like there's some flexibility in the model, to not just paint, but do other things that the client, wants done. They don't have to call someone else to get their pressure washing, for example.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is my rule. As long as it makes financial sense for you, then it's a good job, right?
Okay.
If it doesn't make financial sense, then we shouldn't be doing it anyway. And
Yeah.
so that's pretty much our rule. And like, yeah, are we going to go out and tile somebody's shower? No, right? Are you going to go out and put countertops in? No. But if it's around painting, replacing some trim, doing some things that are kind of around our business, yeah, as long as it makes financial sense and you can make money doing it, I want our franchisees to have opportunities, and there's no reason to limit them. And if it hurts them, then yeah, then that's a bad thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you can make
So
money doing it,
Richard,
I'm happy.
yeah, you mentioned that like you allow both types, like the owner operator who's going to be out there in the field, maybe doing some painting, maybe as an employee that kind of works with them, and other ones that are like looking at this from an executive mindset and they want to be behind the laptop, interacting with the franchisor, interacting with the vendors, but like hiring teams and a manager to kind of build a bigger business. So for people that are in that second bucket, in your view, what separates business owners who can scale from those that just stay stuck?
Yes. So, well, it falls back to the very beginning of this conversation. You have to do all of the stuff. If you want to scale, you have to be doing all of the things, right? Like if we give you a playbook and says, you got to start with play one and then get to play 10, you can't skip five, six, seven, eight and hope you're just going to get to 10, right? Everybody wants to scale, but they want to jump over steps. And when you jump over steps and you try to grow too fast, you actually fall down and then got to get back up and try to get back up again. So that's what I notice is the people who want to scale too quick just want to get there and then they fall backwards. The ones who do the best are like, you're going to go and you're going to step it up, right? You're going to keep going and going up instead, not a ladder, but a step, because a ladder only goes one direction up. A step, you can go left, you can go right, and go back to the middle. And that's what I like better is when you're able to kind of mix and match the stepping instead of just trying to go straight up.
That makes sense. So, like taking a step back at like a macro level, excuse me. Why do you believe the trades are still one of the best businesses to invest in? Why do you believe there's still a massive opportunity?
Well, there's a huge opportunity because the work gets done every day. right? No matter the economy, whether it's up, down, in the middle, there's always something happening. There's even when things are down, when I moved from New Jersey to North Carolina in 2007, that was the housing crisis and
Yeah.
everything was bad, but I was able to move here, start with nothing. I know nobody and build my business up, right? So there's always an opportunity in our space. If things are down and there's foreclosures and there's things going down, well, guess what? There's an opportunity to paint houses that way. If the economy's really good and there's an influx of people spending money, then it's really good, right? Like take COVID as an example. While there were many industries who were suffering, the service businesses, the home services, especially in painting, were actually going up. Right. And so I just feel like it's one of those areas where no matter what's happening, there's always work to be done. And
Yeah.
so that's why it's always going to happen. There's, last I checked, they're still building houses, they're still building good businesses. And, maybe one day when that stops, we can think about it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So, Richard, you've grown Richard's Painting to 28 locations. What's your vision for the next phase of growth? What's the long-term vision for Richard's Painting?
Yeah, right now we want to get to 100 locations, and that's it's a whole nother story. It's hard, right? FYI, Mike, being a franchisor is probably the hardest job on earth.
I've heard that from quite a few people in your seat. Yeah.
It is very difficult because, this is on a different level, but the amount of investment, the amount of opportunity that's out there, and really me as a franchisor, I'm not out there, and I'm not going to disparage anybody, but I'm going to keep it real. I'm not selling a fantasy out there. I'm not out there telling people they're going to do, be a multimillionaire in 3 years. All they got to do is do that. No, like the reality is this is hard work, right? You got to put in the time. And if you do all the steps, you're going to be successful. You're going to make money and we're going to help you get there. But to go from 0 to 100 locations is very difficult, to get franchisees because it's up and down. Like, here's, we were on track this year to do like 12 to 15, had 3 franchisees back out the last minute, signed up. 2 of them couldn't get financing. One, the wife got involved and it was a problem, right? But and so it ruins your momentum. Then you got to start all over again. And to be honest, I've done a terrible job of marketing the franchise myself. As a franchise, I've relied on some other entities to help me with that, and they do a good job. But I know I got to do a better job myself to attract franchisees, so I don't have to rely on somebody else. That's a whole different story. I know you weren't looking to get into that, but
No, but I mean, you're being real. I mean, when you talk about like the growth you've experienced with your own business, and now you're kind of starting that all over again with growing the franchise system. Because as you know, or you probably quickly learned, running your own business is different than being a franchisor. Because now, the successes of the franchise owners, not just how your business performs there in Salisbury.
Oh yeah, no, it's yeah. I mean, it's like being a franchisor can be great, but like also franchisees, they're not your employees; they're your
Right.
partners, right? And so the way that you interact with them and the way you work with them is completely different, right? It's at the end of the day, they own their own businesses. Yes, it's a
Yep.
Richard's Painting, but they are their own business owners. And do they have to, are they supposed to do everything we tell them? Sure. Does it always go that way? No, it doesn't. But we still have to support you, right? We're still going to be here making sure no matter what missteps happen, we're going to be here to support you and pick you up and then keep on going. And that's what makes Richard's Painting great is like, yeah, it's challenging and it's difficult. And me wanting to get to 100 locations, the pure math of it is it costs a lot of money too, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
just grow to 100 locations with $20, right? Like, if you hear people talk about trying to get to 100 locations, it's going to cost you $3 to $5 million. And so not everybody has that money in their bank unless they got a private equity deal or some sort of partners. And like, I'm doing this all myself, right? And so the money that I've generated from my own painting business and other businesses that I've went into the franchise. What's crazy is if you were to think about this, Mike, and if you were me, you would say, Richard, you've never made any money in the 6 years. You've never paid yourself $1, but you're still doing this. And you wonder why,
You've
right?
already
But
told us why, because if you stick with it and you apply those same principles that made you successful in your 20 plus year painting career, you're going to be successful as a franchisor.
yes, so there is hope, and I'm not going to give up. I could tell you that. So whether or not some people say you should, I'm not, because I do know that it's just you never know where the other side of that mountain is, right? Like
Yep.
you never know where the top is, and you never know when you're going to get over it. And so I know if I keep doing my job and I keep being honest with myself and trying to get, past that little hurdle, we're going to get there. And, my goal is to hopefully one day not necessarily be the biggest painting franchise in the country, but I want to be the best painting franchise in the country. So
Very
if we
cool.
can do that, then I'll feel like I accomplished my goal.
Yeah, it's a great goal to set. So, for anyone listening that wants to become an owner, what is the startup cost range in item 7? I know it's not massive because this isn't a retail environment. There's no construction project type of thing. But what's our range to kind of get up and running with franchise fee, working capital, equipment, labor, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think on our FDD, it's somewhere around 67,000 up to 110, I think is the range.
Okay.
In that range. And, quite honestly, nobody has spent over $100,000. There's really no reason to. And that's even, the way we structure our territories is, we have a 10-mile radius with up to 250,000 people. That's our standard territory. And then
Okay.
we have is like what we call steps. Like, so if it goes up 150,000 per in that same, we have a step program that's like $10,000 more for the franchise fee. Again, this is to try to help the franchisee, not, spend so much money to get started, but still have a good equity in their business.
Yeah, there's a good balance there. Now that makes sense. So how about item 19? Do you guys have any earnings guidance in there?
Yeah, we have all the franchisees' gross sales. Since we started, year over year for the last 6 years, and we'll keep putting that in there. And some of them did really well, a couple of them went backwards, and some of them are just flat. Right? It's just
Well, it's good to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you can kind of figure out, who do you want to be, if you get
oh
in.
yeah.
So, Richard, this has been great. I appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. Anything else you want to add to the mix before we wrap up today?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, if you're interested in the service world, home services, you should give us a try. At least talk to us. If you're the kind of person who just, wants to build a really good business, a strong business with great people in your community and make a difference, then you should be reaching out and checking our business out to see if it works for you.
Yep. And I will post the website when I post the episode. And if anyone listening would like to connect with Richard and his team to learn more about becoming a franchise owner with Richard's Painting, contact me at franchiseqb.com and I'll get you connected. Thank you so much, Richard, for taking the time to get in the huddle with us today.
Man, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
You got it. Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.